Notice your jaw for a second, the set of it, the small tension you have been carrying without naming it. Notice your shoulders. Notice the rhythm of your breathing without changing it. That entire arrangement of your body right now, every micro-tension, every soft place, every held position is the readout of a sentence, or a stack of sentences, statements that have been running through your inner mind so often, so quietly, that you stopped hearing them as sentences a long time ago. They became you. They became posture. They became the temperature of your own self-talk. And the question on the table is, what would happen if for 60 seconds you took one new sentence, a clear one, a chosen one, and let it ride that same pathway? Just 60 seconds. One sentence. 60 seconds. The answer is more interesting than the question lets on. Because in those 60 seconds, several things are happening at once inside the inner mind. Pieces of machinery, all running in parallel, all stacking on each other, all leaving a mark that lasts past the 60 seconds. The mark is small, the mark is permanent, and the mark is what we are going to walk through gear by gear so you can see exactly what the lineage saw when they put this principle on paper almost 90 years ago. Stay with me on this one. The first layer is where the whole thing starts. The conscious mind, the part of you that chooses, the part that picks the sentence in the first place, has a specific job in this process. Hill called it the guardian at the gate. The guardian decides what gets in and what gets turned away. Every thought that approaches the deeper mind has to pass through this gate first. Most of the time, the gate is unattended. Whatever drifts up gets waved through. The radio in the kitchen, the comment from the coworker, the headline you scrolled past, the worry you inherited from your father at age 9. All of it walked through unattended. When you sit down and choose a sentence, on purpose, with intention, you have done something the inner mind almost never gets. You have put a guard at the gate and handed that guard a clear instruction. Let this one through. Block the others. That is the first piece of machinery, the directing of attention, the conscious mind selecting what the inner mind will receive. And the moment that happens, a bridge starts forming between the surface layer and the layer underneath. Hill named that bridge in Chapter 4 of Think and Grow Rich, published in 1937. He called it Autosuggestion, the medium of self-instruction, the mechanism by which the conscious mind talks to the deeper mind, repeatedly, on purpose until the deeper mind picks up the message and starts running it as program. Picture it this way. Imagine a long hallway between two rooms. The room at the front is well lit. You can see everything in it. That is the conscious mind. The room at the back is dim. You see the shapes of things in there, but the edges blur. That is the deeper mind. Between those two rooms is a hallway. The hallway is autosuggestion. Every time you repeat a sentence with attention and feeling, you are walking that hallway with a message in your hand. You drop it off at the back room. You walk back. You pick up the same message. You walk it back again. That is what is happening in the first 10 seconds of your 60. A messenger walking a hallway with a piece of paper. That is the picture. That is the mechanics. You see why the lineage was so careful about this. The hallway exists. The messenger is always walking. The only question is what is written on the paper. What does that look like operating in observable behavior? Someone running their chosen sentence on purpose for 2 weeks starts to catch the messenger mid-walk. They are doing the dishes, and they hear their own voice in the back of their head saying the sentence without instruction. They are driving and the sentence surfaces during a red light. They are halfway through a meeting and the words slip in between two thoughts. The messenger is doing exactly what the messenger does, walking the hallway, and now the message in their hand is the one you put there. The unconscious supply has been quietly losing shelf space to the supply you chose. That is the bridge in operation. Drop a like if this is hitting you right now. It helps get this in front of the right people who need to see how the machine actually works. Okay, so that is one gear turning. The next one engages at the same time and it does something the first gear cannot do alone. The deeper mind, the part underneath the surface, has one defining quality the lineage came back to over and over. It accepts whatever the conscious mind hands to it repeatedly with feeling, gets accepted, filed, built into the operating program with the same indifference the soil shows the seed. This is the second principle running in your 60 seconds. Subconscious acceptance. The way Nightingale put it was the cleanest version anyone has ever managed. He said the deeper mind is like a piece of farmland. The land treats corn and nightshade with the same indifference. Whatever seed lands in it grows with the same care, the same energy, the same neutrality. Plant corn, you get corn. Plant nightshade, you get nightshade. The land does its job either way. In 1956, Nightingale recorded that idea in The Strangest Secret. That recording became the first spoken word record to sell over 1 million copies. The first spoken word gold record in history. 1 million people bought it because in 28 minutes, Nightingale handed the listener a piece of machinery they had been operating their whole life without knowing it existed. Picture the farmland again. Now picture yourself, 60 seconds, repeating one chosen sentence. Each repetition is a seed. The land registers consistency. 12, 15, 20 seeds in a row, all the same shape, all hitting the same soil. Consistency is the signal. Consistency is what tells the inner mind, this matters, this is important, this is what we are growing now. And here is what the lineage understood that took the modern world another half-century to confirm. The deeper mind processes a sentence repeated about something real and a sentence repeated about something not yet real with the same machinery. The seed is the seed. The land treats both as seeds. It just grows what gets planted. That is why Hill prescribed the written statement. Read aloud, twice daily, with feeling, once before sleep. Once after waking, he was describing a maintenance schedule for the most important piece of equipment a person owns. You see what that means for your 60 seconds? The deeper mind in those 60 seconds is already accepting what you said. The only variable is how much of it gets through before you stop. 60 seconds is a small dose. It is still a dose. The first dose. The first deposit in an account that compounds. What does that look like operating in observable behavior? Someone who has run one chosen sentence for 60 seconds every morning for 2 weeks walks into a room differently. The shift is small. The shift is measurable. Their eye contact lasts a half-second longer. Their posture settles a quarter-inch taller. Their voice drops a notch. None of these things were rehearsed. The seed was planted. The land is doing what land does. The body is reading the program and adjusting itself to match. That right there, that is the whole game. All right, now the third gear engages, and this one is where the principle stops being a one-time event and starts becoming permanent. The third principle is what Hill called hypnotic rhythm, and what Proctor later renamed the paradigm. Same mechanics, different vocabulary. The principle is the law that fixes repeated thoughts into permanent programming. Think the same thought long enough, with enough emotional weight, and the deeper mind stops treating it as a thought and starts treating it as a fact. As an instruction, as a setting on the thermostat that holds. How does that happen mechanically? Through groove formation. Picture a dirt road that runs through a field. The first time a wagon wheel rolls over the grass, it bends the blades and leaves a faint mark. The second wagon follows the first. The third follows the second. By the 100th pass, there is a groove in the dirt. By the 1,000th, the groove is a rut. By the 10,000th, the rut is a road, and a wagon coming through that field will follow that road by default. The path of least resistance has been carved into the ground, and the wheel follows the path the ground offers. That is what is happening in your inner mind during the 60 seconds. The first repetition leaves a faint mark. By the 10th, the mark is a track. By the 30th, the track is a groove. The groove gets smoother every time you walk it. And the mind, the next time it has a free moment, an idle stretch, a gap between tasks, defaults to the smoothest available groove. That is what default means. That is what the autopilot is. The deepest groove gets the wheel. Modern brain imaging confirmed what Hill documented in 1937. Repeated firing of the same pathway physically thickens the insulation around it. The pathway gets faster, more efficient. More automatic, the science caught up about 60 years later. The principle was already on the page. So here is what to notice about the third gear. The 60 seconds is two things at once. You are saying words and carving a track, and the track will be there tomorrow. Faint, yes. Easy to overgrow, yes. Present, yes. The first cut has been made, and the second cut, when it comes, lands deeper because the ground was already softened. What does that look like operating in real life? Someone decides their chosen sentences, "This work flows through me with ease." They run it for 60 seconds the first morning. By Wednesday, they catch themselves humming it walking to the kitchen. By Friday, the words show up uninvited when their hand is on a doorknob. By the second week, the words have started replacing the old sentence that used to live there. The old sentence, whatever it was, "This is too hard. I am not built for this. I always struggle with this kind of thing," has been getting less traffic. The new road is taking the wagons. The old groove fades through neglect. A groove that goes unwalked starts to overgrow. Stay with me. The next piece is where the whole equation gets specific. The fourth gear is the one most listeners never see, and it is the one that explains why the lineage figures spoke about this principle the way an astronomer speaks about gravity. Every thought you hold, the lineage taught, carries a frequency, a vibration, a signal that broadcasts outward. The deeper mind, charged with a definite thought repeated in faith, becomes a transmitter. And the transmitter sends the signal inward and outward at the same time. Into the body, yes. Into the posture, yes. Also into the room, into the conversations, into the choices the day presents, into the doors that open and the doors that close. Picture a radio. The dial sets the frequency. The frequency determines what you receive. Tune the dial to one station, you hear that station. Tune it to another, you hear another. The signals are all in the air at the same time. You receive the one your dial is set to. The inner mind works the same way. Whatever sentence is running on the deepest groove sets the frequency of the receiver. And the receiver, all day long, is filtering what reaches your awareness. Out of the 10,000 stimuli passing through your field of attention every hour, the ones that match your set frequency get through. The rest stay invisible. Two people walking down the same street can have completely different days. One sees opportunity, one sees obstacles. The street is the same. The dial is different. The receiver is doing exactly what it was built to do. Returning matches. In your 60 seconds, you are nudging the dial. A quarter turn, maybe an eighth, a measurable turn, and the next hour of your day, the receiver is filtering against a slightly different setting. Slightly more of one kind of signal gets through, slightly less of another. By the end of the day, the cumulative effect of that quarter turn has shaped what you noticed, what you remembered, what you said out loud, what you held back, who you reached out to, who you let pass. You see why that changes things? The 60 seconds is the input. The output is the next 18 hours of perception running against a slightly retuned filter. The investment is small. The leverage is enormous. Hill saw this pattern repeat across over 500 interviews conducted over 20 years on Carnegie's commission. The pattern was so consistent, he organized it into a philosophy. The wealthy ones, the achievers, the ones who built things that lasted, all had this in common. They had learned, one way or another, to keep one chosen sentence running on the deepest groove. The sentence varied. The mechanism held. They were broadcasting their definite chief aim into the deeper mind on a loop, and the receiver was returning matches all day long. What does that look like in observable behavior? Someone running one sentence for 30 days starts to attract conversations they would have missed before. The shift is in the receiver. Someone mentions a contact at a coffee shop. The mention used to slide past. Now it lands. They follow up. The follow-up leads somewhere. The somewhere becomes a meeting. The meeting becomes a turning point. From the outside, it looks like luck. From the inside, it is the dial. The dial was retuned during 60-second repetitions over 4 weeks. If something in this just clicked for you, drop a comment and tell us what shifted. We read every single one. Okay, so now 4 gears are visible: conscious selection, subconscious acceptance, groove formation, frequency broadcast, all 4 running at the same time inside 1 minute of repetition. There is a 5th gear we have not named yet, and it is the one that closes the loop on why 60 seconds compounds the way it does. Hill named it in Chapter 2 of Think and Grow Rich, the chapter on desire. Nightingale wrapped it inside the same 6-word sentence everyone quotes him on. Proctor drew it on whiteboards for 60 years. The 5th gear is emotion, the accelerant, the voltage, the thing that turns a sentence from a piece of language into a piece of programming. Here is what emotion does mechanically. A sentence repeated flat with no feeling walks the bridge once and gets filed in the back room as one more piece of paper in a stack of 10,000. The deeper mind notices it and shelves it as routine. The groove forms slowly. The frequency shifts a hair. The seed sits cold in cool soil. Add feeling, genuine feeling, the kind that comes when the sentence connects to something you actually want, something the body responds to before the mind has finished the words. Now the same sentence walks the same bridge with a different weight. The deeper mind treats it as urgent. The groove cuts deeper on the first pass than 10 cold passes would have cut. The frequency shifts measurably. The seed lands in warm soil and germinates in hours instead of weeks. Picture a piece of metal. Cold metal can be hammered all day and barely change shape. Heat the metal until it glows white, and the same hammer reshapes it in 3 blows. The metal is the deeper mind. The hammer is the sentence. The white heat is emotion. Cold metal resists. White heat metal flows. That is why Hill insisted the statement be read aloud with feeling. Aloud and twice daily and with feeling. He was describing the temperature requirement. Below a certain temperature, the metal stays in shape. Above that temperature, the metal becomes workable. The instruction was a metallurgy instruction wearing the clothes of a reading instruction. What does that look like operating in someone's life? Someone reads their sentence for 60 seconds while half listening to a podcast in the background. The sentence runs at low heat. The metal barely moves. The next morning, the same person reads the same sentence after picturing for 10 seconds what the sentence would mean if it were already true. The picture lights the body. The body lights the voice. The voice carries the heat into the words. 60 seconds at white heat does the work of an hour at room temperature. They will not know that consciously. The inner mind knows. The groove deepens at a rate the cold version cannot match. The 5th gear is the multiplier on the first 4. 60 seconds at room temperature is an investment. 60 seconds at white heat is a leveraged investment. The math changes. You see why the lineage came back to feeling on every page. They had watched the difference between cold repetition and emotional repetition in over 500 interviews. The cold version produced gradual change. The hot version produced visible turning points. Same sentence. Same minutes. Different temperature. Different output. All right, 5 gears on the table. There are 2 more we have to put in front of you before the picture is complete, because the lineage taught 7 moving parts inside this one phenomenon, and stopping at 5 would short the listener. The 6th gear is the one that runs while you are not paying attention. Hill called it out specifically in Chapter 4. The deeper mind works continuously. It does not sleep. While the surface layer rests, the layer underneath is processing the instructions you fed it during the day. This is the part that surprises people the first time it lands. The 60 seconds you spent in the morning, repeating your chosen sentence with feeling, keeps running after you walk away from the chair. The sentence stays active, quietly, underneath everything else, while you are answering an email, while you are eating lunch, while you are sitting in traffic, while you are asleep. The deeper mind has been handed the instruction, and the deeper mind is on the clock. Picture a small workshop in the back of a house. The owner walks in for 60 seconds in the morning, drops a blueprint on the workbench, points at it, says build this, and walks out. The workshop runs all day. The lights stay on. The tools keep moving. The blueprint stays on the bench. Whoever is working in there glances at the blueprint between every task and adjusts the work to match. By the time the owner comes back at night, half a wall has been framed. The owner did 60 seconds of work. The workshop did 14 hours. That is the sixth gear. That is what the lineage meant when they said the deeper mind never rests. Your morning 60 seconds is 60 seconds of instruction handed to a workshop that runs around the clock on whatever blueprint is currently on the bench. And here is what makes the sixth gear matter so much for the question on the table. The blueprint stays on the bench until a new blueprint replaces it. The longer the same blueprint stays unchanged, the more of the structure gets built to match it. What does that look like in observable behavior? Someone runs their chosen sentence in the morning. By afternoon, they catch themselves making a small decision, a tiny one, the kind that does not feel like a decision, that lines up with the sentence they pass on a snack they would have eaten yesterday. They send the email they had been avoiding. They take the long way home, and the long way home turns out to have been the right call. None of those felt connected to the morning. The workshop knows. The workshop has been building the wall all day? You see how that operates? You see why the lineage pushed twice daily so hard. Because the night reading sets the blueprint for the deeper mind during sleep, when surface activity is at its lowest and acceptance is at its highest. 8 hours of workshop time on a fresh blueprint, then morning reading reinforces the blueprint as the day starts. 2 endpoints, 24 hours of workshop running on the chosen design. Subscribe if you want more of this. We teach from Carnegie, Hill, Nightingale, Proctor, and the full lineage, and we go this deep every single time. Now the seventh gear. Hill called it the sixth sense, the receiving set, the faculty through which ideas, plans, and solutions arrive from a source beyond ordinary reasoning. Strip the language back to mechanics. The receiving set is what happens after the 4 gears have been running long enough on a clear, definite instruction. The bridge is established. The acceptance is settled. The groove is deep. The broadcast is broadcasting. The workshop is building. Once all of that is in place, something else starts to happen. Solutions arrive. Names come to mind. Ideas surface. Creative combinations appear that the surface mind could have assembled by reasoning given a year, but here they arrive in a single afternoon. Picture a search engine that runs in the background while you do other things. You typed one query into it 60 days ago. Most of the time you forgot you typed anything. The engine kept running. It crawled. It indexed. It gathered. Today you are washing your hands at the sink and an answer surfaces. A connection between 2 things you had never connected. A name of someone you should call. A solution to a problem you had stopped working on. The engine has been running this whole time. The 60 seconds you spent typing the query is the entire reason the engine had something to look for. That is the 7th gear, the receiving set. Open after the other gears have been running long enough to establish the search. Hill described it in Chapter 14 of Think and Grow Rich, and he was careful to say it operates only after the other principles have been understood and applied. He was describing a sequence. Plant the seed. Walk the bridge. Carve the groove. Tune the dial. Let the workshop run. Then, the receiving set opens. In that order. What does that look like in observable behavior? Someone runs their chosen sentence for 90 days. In week 10, they wake up at 3 in the morning with an idea they have to write down. In week 11, they bump into someone at a grocery store who happens to be the exact connection they needed for a problem they had set aside. In week 12, an old contact reaches out without prompting and offers exactly what the sentence was about. From the outside, those events look like coincidence. From the inside, the receiving set has been open and the search engine has been crawling. The lineage figures spoke about this with care because they knew how it sounded. Hill saw it across over 500 interviews. He called it the most fascinating principle in the book. He could see the seventh gear engage in everyone he interviewed who had achieved its scale. The mechanics were the same in all of them. They had given the deeper mind a clear, definite, repeated emotionalized instruction, and they had kept it there long enough for the search to finish. 60 seconds is the input. The seventh gear is the long tail output, the compounding payoff. Let that sit for a second. So now the 7 gears are on the table: conscious selection, subconscious acceptance, groove formation, frequency broadcast, emotional accelerant, continuous workshop, receiving set, 7 pieces of machinery, all engaged by 1 minute of focused repetition, all running on a sentence you chose, all pointing toward the same outcome the sentence describes. Now we walk back through the picture and see what it actually means. 60 seconds is the smallest deposit that still counts as a deposit. It is the unit of input the inner mind requires before something starts becoming real on the inside. Below 60, the seed gets blown off the field before it touches soil. Above 60, the compounding shows up faster. 60 is the floor, and the floor matters because consistency is what the deeper mind reads. 60 seconds today plus 60 seconds tomorrow plus 60 seconds the day after teaches the inner mind something a single 10-minute session struggles to teach. It teaches that this sentence is a resident. The land has been planted with the same seed in the same soil 4 days running. The land trusts the planter. The land commits to the crop. That is hypnotic rhythm. That is the law. The unspectacular daily return. The same 60 seconds, at the same time, in the same spot, on the same sentence, builds a harvest the panicked once-a-month version cannot touch. Picture the farmland one more time. A farmer who walks the field every morning, plants 10 seeds, and walks home will have a harvest. A farmer who shows up once a year and dumps 1,000 seeds in a heap will have a heap of seeds. The land responds to rhythm. The deeper mind is the same way. This is why Hill was so specific. Twice daily, aloud, with feeling. Once before sleep when the guardian of the gate is tiring. Once after waking when the guardian has yet to post up for the day. He was naming the 2 windows when the gate is least guarded. The 2 windows when 60 seconds does the most work for the least effort. And here is the part the lineage understood that anyone reading this for the first time should sit with. The mechanism runs on input, repetition with attention and feeling. That is the fuel. The same way a wheel rolling through grass leaves a mark whether the grass approves of wheels. The mark gets made because the wheel rolled. That is mechanics. Working as mechanics work. You repeat the sentence for 60 seconds. The 7 gears engage. Conscious attention sets the message. The deeper mind accepts it. The groove deepens through repetition. The frequency broadcast retunes the receiver. Emotion heats the metal. The workshop builds while you are gone. The receiving set begins to crawl. All 7 operate because the conditions for operation were met. The conditions are repetition with attention and feeling. That is it. The lineage figures, all of them, taught this with a kind of calm certainty that confused new readers. New readers wanted permission, validation, a study, a citation. The lineage taught the principle directly, because the principle was the principle. They were teaching it the way a physics teacher teaches gravity. A physics teacher describing what gravity does. Gravity does what it does whether the room agrees with it or argues with it. This is what we do here. There is one more thing to put on the table before we close, because without it, the picture is incomplete. The 7 gears are running in everyone all the time, regardless of awareness. That is the part the lineage came back to in every chapter, in every recording, in every seminar. The machinery is mandatory. The autosuggestion bridge is always carrying messages. The deeper mind is always accepting. The groove is always deepening. The frequency is always broadcasting. The workshop is always building. The receiving set is always set to whatever query was last entered. The only choice is what gets sent down the bridge. When the conscious mind leaves the gate unattended, the unconscious supply takes over, and the unconscious supply by default runs negative. It runs worry, it runs old criticism from people no longer in the room. It runs the sentence your second-grade teacher said that you do not consciously remember. It runs whatever was loudest in your environment for the longest time. It runs by default, and the deeper mind accepts that supply with the same indifference, plants the seed, carves the groove, tunes the dial. The 7 gears process the input they are given. The source is invisible to the gears. The mechanics are everything to the gears. When the lineage said, choose a sentence and run it for 60 seconds, they were redirecting a process that was already running. The wheel was already rolling. They were asking you to put your hand on the steering and pick the road. Picture the difference. 2 people, same age, same background, same starting position. One has been running by default, the sentence I am behind on everything for 10 years. The other has been running on purpose, the sentence I am building something the world needs for 10 years. The 7 gears have been running in both. The bridge, the acceptance, the groove, the broadcast, the heat, the workshop, the receiving set. Same mechanics, same indifference of the system. Different input, different output. Same street, same opportunities, different filters, different broadcasts, different harvests. That is what the lineage was protecting when they wrote 60 seconds twice daily, aloud, with feeling. They were handing you the steering wheel of a vehicle you had been riding in for your whole life. The steering was always there. The hand on the wheel is what the 60 seconds is for. So when the question comes back around, what happens to the inner mind when you repeat one sentence for 60 seconds? The answer is now visible. 7 gears engage. The conscious mind directs. The deeper mind accepts. The groove deepens. The frequency retunes. Emotion accelerates. The workshop runs around the clock. The receiving set opens. Each on its own would be enough to matter. The 7 together, running in parallel on a sentence you chose, twice a day, with feeling, is a piece of personal machinery so precise that the people who learn to operate it deliberately built fortunes, careers, marriages, recoveries, second acts, and bodies of work that outlasted them. 60 seconds, 1 sentence, 7 gears, a lifetime of compounding. The farmland is patient. The hallway is always walked. The wheel is always rolling. The dial is always set somewhere. The workshop is always lit. The search is always crawling. All of that runs whether you watch it or not. The only thing your 60 seconds does is decide what gets planted, what gets carried, what gets carved, what gets broadcast, what gets heated, what gets built, and what gets searched for. That is a small decision, and it is the decision that, made consistently, made on purpose, made twice a day for long enough, ends up looking from the outside like an entirely different life. Hill sat across from over 500 people who had built such lives. He spent 20 years in those rooms. The one thing they all had in common was that they had learned to keep one chosen sentence on the deepest groove and let the gears do their work. The farmer's land treats every seed with the same care. The hallway is indifferent to the message. The wheel rolls along whatever ground it meets. The dial holds whatever station it was last set to. The metal takes whatever shape the hammer drives into it. The workshop builds whatever blueprint is on the bench. The search engine returns matches for whatever query was last typed in. All 7 pieces of the machine are precise. All 7 are running right now, in you, this moment, while you are listening. The machinery has been running your whole life. The 60 seconds picks the sentence the machinery is running on. Pick well. The farmland will grow what you plant. It always has. It always will. A green shoot in a week. A stalk in a month. A tree in a decade. The same 7 gears that have been quietly building whatever you grew up with, redirected to a sentence you chose and held white hot for 60 seconds at a time. Nightingale compressed the whole picture into 6 words in 1956. And 1,000,000 people bought the recording because every person who heard it recognized the truth before it finished. We become what we think about. The recognition is older than the recording. The recording was the moment somebody finally said it plainly, 60 seconds at a time, one sentence at a time. White heat in the hands, 7 gears underneath, doing the work you do not see, on the seed you chose to plant. That is the machinery. That is the gift the lineage left in the open for anyone willing to pick it up. That is what happens in your inner mind when you decide, today, to put your hand on one chosen seed and let the wheel roll.